Hold up the lamp.
Yeah, they have these, and it's I paid 20 bucks for one. Yeah. 1/4-inch bit. Just for it. Well, there he is. He's in a nice shape too.
I was just telling your wife that you were showing us the thermometer that you used for her. She says, "I know the one that he's talking about."
Oh, she puts up with a lot. I had a kid that worked for me several years. His name was Fritz Riedel, German boy. And his grandfather was a architect, and he built houses in Europe and Russia and China. He was over there and drew the plans and everything, you know. So he comes, and all the Lutheran churches here in Fort Wayne, at one time, he had made all the plans for all them churches. Well, Fritz inherited a lot of knowledge. Smartest kid. He'd fix any tool in that bakery. When it broke down, he could fix it. Well, he went on. He didn't graduate from school. My wife kept after him, but he didn't graduate. So he got a job up around Detroit, met a gal, and she made him go to school, night school, and she made him go to college, and he graduated from college. He was smart enough. He just never had the time, you know. But he's been very successful in his life, and he stopped in here about 3 weeks ago, and she had never seen these tools. He had. She got the biggest kick out of that from LaPorte, Indiana. And when they went home, he got sick here a week ago, and he got sick, and he had a heart attack, and he died.
A smart man like that, huh?
Oh, golly. And a young kid. Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's just right in the prime of his life.
Yeah.
And that is?
For clothing, working with cloth.
No, for in the Navy, working on ropes.
Oh.
It's a fib, and I'm not telling you a fib. It's a fib. But this gets in a crack and gets them ropes undone. And they have to, and they can hang them here if they want to.
So don't tell no fibs.
Yeah. Don't tell no fibs there. Right. Where in the heck's the key at that winds it at? Right there it is,
Right
but
there,
you gotta have a key.
Have a key to extend up in there. Yeah.
The hunting pecker. That's what he is, a hunting pecker. Business. And he had them headers back there for making bolts, you know, the blacksmiths made the old bolts for them, made a round head on them in different sizes. Hands. This is a shillelagh. The Irish, you know, they use that. That's a shillelagh. And
there's a saying, you know, and out back there where I came from, that they'd give them a shillelagh.
Sure.
And that's what they'd use.
Sure. Well, they had this down there to quell arguments and stuff. And when they sold out, he come down here. And he says, "John," he says, "you're the oldest one on the street, and we want you to keep this because we think that you'll keep it and have it there." And I said, "You're not a kid. I appreciate that."
Irish spinning wheel.
Yeah, that's who it works.
That looks like cherry.
Tony Galano.
Yeah, I remember that name. You ever see anything like this?
Up in it and with a rope, and they'd put a loop in it.
Shoulder.
Oh.
They'd put it on their shoulder and go down the tracks
Oh,
with
really?
it. And he'd come into town to beg to get, you know, food. And Art made this from Sloan book, I believe. He made this from that.
I've never seen anything like that before. Because there's a lot of things down here I've never seen anything like it.
Say it again, John. I'll tell you.
Say it again.
History, history, history. Okay.
There it is. It's set right in this case right here. And it's a little motor, and it had a lead off of it.
It made its own battery.
It
Edison made his own battery.
it made the needle go up and down. And then you take it on a piece of paper, you'd write that, and then you'd go like this. And Edison called
It was a mimeograph machine, the first mimeograph.
Yeah. But he was referred to as a father of modern duplication.
He could make 5,000 copies.
And I was fortunate enough to sell it. That's my graduation.
Now, do you wish you'd kept it?
No.
No?
Not for that.
No, you know why too, Phil? He put it into the Smithsonian Institute.
Okay.
It's there.
That's where it is
See,
now.
I want to go see it. I can go see it. Seen this or not? You probably are aware of it. This just goes on a hook, on a stump, and that
For cutting hair or something.
that
Or the shaving.
no, you'd put usually a point on a stick,
Oh, okay.
making posts or something like it, or shingles or wood or anything. If he was making a hammer handle, well, this would do it, and it would hold on here like this, and you just go down and see, and
Yeah.
but it's. And they use this on Sunday mornings in the fireplace.
Okay. I like that.
Isn't that neat?
Is it?
Isn't that neat?
Oh, those are neat.
I like
All
them little
miniatures.
things here. Of course, most of these are just toys, you know.
Yeah.
In fact, practically everything in there is, except this and maybe this. There's a hidden nailer. You'd put a 1/4-inch wood chisel in here and tighten it down. Run it on like this is a top of a cabinet, and you wanted to hold it down. You just run that in there like that, and it would pull the
Pull it.
wood up like a circle, you know.
Mhm.
You'd put your nail in there,
And then
sink
glue-
it, and
glue her back down.
glue it back down.
Yeah.
They call them hidden nailers. Hammers. Some of them are engineering hammers. Have any idea what that is?
What are these planes used for? What do they
Co-
call them?
Well, they're core box
Core
planes,
box, yeah, core box.
but they make the square corner on a
Hmm.
pattern or whatever you're making. These these things here are kind of scarce.
Mm-hmm.
I read them both from England. So I can't get these things out of here. You said that's more rules.
And rules. But now they make them out of plastic. Oh, look at that nice over here.
Oh.
Those are for these
Really?
Nordic braces right here.
See, they have a square hole in it.
I started with one. I had the bit. I'm looking for the brace to fit it. I go to the Ohio tool collectors over there, and I asked the guy what it was, and he told me. And he says, I got a brace that fits that, and I said, I'll take that. I bought it off of him. Then Bill Bader come, and I had that in my hand. He says, where'd you get that?
Is he still living?
Last I heard he was. Not very good. But he said, well, I got one of them that I'll sell you, and it's in the car. So I got 2 that day, and I've added a few more there.
Couple more.
But that sent me on. That inspired me on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is a drawer that was my granddad and grandma on my mother's side, and that's their reading glasses, and that's her sewing, and he's got a razor here for his shaving. This was Grandma
Purse.
Lula's purse,
Coin purse.
and this was for the horse blankets on the buggy. And that was her thimble, button hook. I'm very fortunate to have them. In the ocean down off the coast of Florida for maybe 300 years. See how pitted it was?
Mm-hmm.
And Art bought that off of a guy down there that did digging for money and stuff. And he got this, and he made the handle and put it in there, and I think it's one of a kind.
Yeah.
There's not too many like that. That, and when they would saw a great big board, here's a square board, and they get down here, the saw kerf would be like this, and they'd knock that off there with that. So they get another 2 or 3 inches on the board.
Oh.
It's a pretty wide slick.
See, it's made heavy so that you can stand over a beam and control the tool where you're cutting. I have one at home, and I have a couple of small ones, but one big one like that.
I kind of like this router. It's got beautiful lines to it. They got a file in here for a
Cutter.
for a cutter. Works all right. Got a name for that? It's a sugar devil or a fruit devil. They'd have them sugars in barrel, and they come up on the rivers, and and they'd be damp, and they couldn't get it out of the barrel, and they'd put this in here and twist that, and get enough to get out and get to what they needed. Then they had to pound it down and beat it.
I know what you gave for it, John. You don't need to tell me.
I don't know what I get.
200
It
bucks.
says sold. Sold. I took the $200 over. Got in trouble. My wife gave me a heck about that $200. I just cut that off one day. I said, I can solve that problem. But that's a twivel.
Well, you told me about that. When you...
And sold at an auction in London. And had that sharp point down here.
See how it's wore off here. See, it was maybe that long. Because the printing, the identification is on
That was
there.
a few years, wasn't it?
All right, but give me the history on the tool.
It is a trivel, and they would take and mortise out holes
Okay.
in a log or a plank,
Or a,
and this would cut that C-square.
Okay.
that they were made with.
You don't preach, do you?
Only to my wife.
Well, I can tell you this story. You know what that is?
No, but you're going to tell me.
That's a cant hook, I guess you'd call them.
Okay.
You'd tie a rope in this to the tree and push this up the mule's ass, and he can't go nowhere.
Okay.
But that's what they made them for. For the story, I think, just only.
Tell you what, I'll tell them that, I'll show them that special spoon that I have at home that Art made.
Which
Take your shoe off, and you can lift it up.
Get it up, you don't have to bend over to get it.
Needed one of those a couple times.
And
As you get older.
I've got two of those, and one of them's got a Captain so-and-so's name. Of course, he had boots in the cavalry, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so he used one of those. Well, there's a lot of stuff behind them mirrors, isn't there? This is the neatest carpenter's tool I've got. I think, to me it is. Means more to me than anything that I've got. The carpenter would put that on the floor, adjust that for the thickness he wanted, put the door in there, then he could plane that up there. Would hold it. And that would snap right down on it. So
That's
tight.
using your head instead of your hands and feet.
The weight of the weight of the door would snap
Tighten
down there
itself.
and then hold it in place. Again, which that is it. And this is the massive jack that they would use to jack up that wagon and put a new wheel on there. And they had, every wagon had one of these as it went west. That was a tool they had to have. And what would happen, the wagon would break down, as it breaks so many times, and the horses would die. They would only have one horse pulling the covered wagon. They had to throw the steel overboard. It's too heavy. See, that weighs 75 pounds probably. So the steel was found on that Oregon Trail,
Oh, okay.
but the wood wasn't. And Art got the steel from one, and he put the wood with it. And then also this was a
Lubricate the bearings.
every night when they'd get
wood.
where when they come to a stop, they would use this to butter up they take the wheel off and butter that up.
Excellent.
And now we're Decatur, and this was the Indiana Blacksmiths Association Conference in 1994. Now this was probably given to the Forge and Friendship, Indiana. And this is probably given to KID, and that's his kid, was probably his name, as a president. Now this was in an auction. He died and the family sold this. Why would they sell it? Beautiful.
Yes, it is.
Beautiful. Isn't that something?
Yeah, I'll say.
It's a shame.
People don't have value anymore.
Derson put too much torque on
It'll
there.
split. All
But
of
you
it.
could put a piece of leather in there and work on it, a shoe, and this sticks in the ground, and you put it between your knees, and works real good.
There's some piano tuning tools.
Yeah, try one.
That's interesting.
Only thing that I could figure was that was one in a cane, and then they'd use that as a protection.
I hear it.
And Nancy let me go to a flea market before daylight downtown, and it's just like the ones we have here. And I bought that down there. That's an old grapevine. And when I got in on the streetcar to go back to the edge of town, we had a hotel at the edge of town. We didn't stay up with the high rollers. We got out there with the common people. And I had that a paper bag, and it was getting wet on the bottom. And I got on this bus, streetcar, nobody else on there, but it was about 4 or 5 toughies down to the end of the thing. And they looking at me. They was laughing like it. And all of a sudden, that sack, it was wet, that dropped out on the steel deck. And they looked at that, and their eyes got real big, you know. And I pointed my finger at it, 9. Boy, they turned around. They looked ahead the whole rest of the trip. They never looked at me once. Never looked at me once. I didn't say nothing but 9. I just looked at him. I reached down and picked.
Through Warsaw.
He did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Several times.
Yeah.
Okay. When he got shot up there in Chicago, he come out of Chicago Theater and he come down to the alley. And when he got to the alley, that's when the Secret Service opened up.
Yeah, lady in red.
And the lady with the lady in red. And they said in the newspaper the next day that men took their handkerchiefs and dipped in the blood, and women tore their print dresses and dipped in the blood. And I bought this gun when John was going to music lessons, guitar lessons down on Calhoun Street when he was about 9, 10 years old. And I bought this gun down there. And it had a piece of cardboard on the bottom. And I opened that cardboard up one day, and here this was. Down in there, underneath that, it had all these blood stains on that. It had holes in it, and it had been sewn up. Look at that. Now that had to be a man that had sewn that up, you know, that had a needle and thread, and he put that back together. These sold for 3 cents at that time, because I remember I got my prize in the class was a handkerchief like this, and I knew what they cost, 3 cents. That's what I got for Christmas in my school in exchange. But it's got all this blood on there. I says, that has to be the blood from John Dillinger. And one of these days, I'm going to have the DNA done on that to see, because I think that's what it was. It's got a laundry mark here on it, and there was no laundry marks here. There was no laundries here in Fort Wayne at that time. So, what do you think? Illinois. Now that's a pattern. Now they forged that. They made a pattern out of this. They put this in sand and filled it full of metal to make a sledgehammer. This left a hole in there for
The handle.
the handle. I thought that was interesting.
The plug.
Did it? What's the cords?
It's all right. I just
I
pushed the
told you
plug
that
out.
earlier. They would run roller ice skates over that, or a bench scraper, wood scraper over that to put a fine edge on it. All homemade. I don't think they manufactured those. I don't believe. Hangs up on a nail on a wall.
But
Betty lamp.
oh really?
It had a wick in that, and it would burn.
Okay.
They hang it over the side.
We don't want to get near the curtains.
This was from, I don't know where they got it. They found a whole case of these, and they had them at Darley's barn. Did you get any of them when you was up there? They were nails. There was an era back in the 20s and 30s, early 30s, that they'd put these in the wall and hang pictures on them instead of a nail. Make it decorative.
Yeah.
This was on their stoves, see, so it was their cook stove had these hanging on all the doors so that they could pull them. They wouldn't be real hot, see. They'd be cooled off.
Yeah.
And the heating stove in the front room had them on there. So this went right along with it. They put them up there. These went like hotcakes. They sold them at the hardwares. And these people had brand new ones
Hmm.
that was left over, see? Not rusted or anything. Wrapped up in a paper. Yeah. And the Chinese and Japanese on the West Coast would use this on the big crates to pull them. Wooden crates. And then it kind of went out because of the cardboard, see?
Mm-hmm.
But they still used them. But they had, did you ever hear of cant hook fights? They'd fight till they'd go to eat and they'd get drunk. They'd come back to the ship and they'd get in one of these cant hook. And whenever a guy got one of these in the brain, that was the end of that.
Yeah.
But they've outlawed them. But there's a kid that lived with my son over here in an apartment, and he sent that to me when I got home when he seen the tools here.
Now, what was the hammer with the extension on it?
Here, that I found that at brand new, and they would put up signs. They'd put the sign in here
Okay.
and in here, and put a tack in here, and go up on the pole, way up on the pole,
Okay.
where the kids couldn't reach it.
Okay.
Tie it in and pull it out, and then put another nail in on this end here. See.
Interesting.
Somebody was using their heads instead of their hands and feet. Now tell me what that is.
Well, they had that in Ohio tool collectors, and they would put a wire on this and drive this down the ground and hook it to the fence so the pigs couldn't get underneath the wire fence.
Really? Possible.
I thought it was kind of far-fetched, but
The log.
there again, it laid in the rivers for years. When they used to send the logs down the river,
Keep them together.
they'd put these in the end, and then over here they'd put another one, and they'd make rafts, and they wouldn't lose so many trees, logs. They wouldn't get out and go by themselves. And that was laid, but that laid in a stream for
Ages.
150 years, maybe longer. This is this is the handle, and this was what would go on there, and they would flail wheat or grain in a barn. They'd have it in there. The hay would be in there. The straw would be in there. They'd have a big pile of it, and they'd flail that till they got down, and the grain would all be on the floor, and they'd sweep it up. That ore,
Slag. Whatever.
that's a piece of iron ore from up in or copper ore up in northern Michigan.
Oh. Copper Mountain.
Yeah, they have copper mines up there. Nope. That's a trammel. They'd hook this in the fireplace up here like this.
Oh, okay.
Put the beans on that. And when it's real cold, just start the fire and it gets hotter, they'd raise this up here like that. And it get a little hotter, they'd raise it up to That's a trammel, and here is one that I picked up in Switzerland. Well, I picked this one up too. I got both of these there. This is the same thing, only it uses a hook. And it's a homemade chain. Bought that at a flea market where the I scared the kids, I got this down there. And Nancy said, "What are you bringing that junk of steel for? How are we going to get that on the plane to go home?" I said, "I'll get it on there if I have to throw it over the top of the thing." Well, the next day or the day after that, we went to the National Museum of History there in Zurich. We paid our ticket and give it to the woman there, and the first thing we come to, they had a big window here, and inside there they had a fireplace and a family sitting there, the father, son, the kids were playing down in front of the fireplace, and he's sitting there, she's over there cooking. And in the fireplace was the sister of this one, sitting there holding up beans, and they had a artificial fire in there, you know, and the smoke was coming up. And I says, "Now, honey, look at that trammel there. Does that look like the one I got back at the house?" "I'll be dang," she said. And I just tell you, I just thought that was a find of its kind.
Oh yeah.
Well, to make the story, to finish the story, we went to the airport and we got in line on this Zurich airplane company. So we got in line and we waited and we waited. We was there an hour and something in that line. And I'm pulling the stuff along, you know, and everything. And so she says, "Now you're going to have to check that through." She says, they wouldn't take it. It's too heavy. You'll have to carry it on. So I carried it on. So we was the first one on the plane. And I had to get a swing. I got a swing and I got it up there. I got it up overhead. But boy, I tell you, I thought I was going to have to get some help. It was heavy. That's Civil War issue. And what they did, the soldier could stick this in a tree and put a candle in it and read a letter from home, or put a lantern on it and hang it on here and read a letter from home. And so Nancy said, "Oh, baloney." So we got up to the Smithsonian and they had one in there and showed them. I said, there's that baloney.
Yeah.
And she hasn't doubted you since, right?
Yeah, she's doubted me several times. You hadn't figured out Gurney? I thought you probably forgot that. I got another one around here somewhere. Here it is. Now this one here is old, and this is broke off. See there?
Yeah.
But this is the same thing. Different make. Different.
Funnel for bottles?
No, sir.
No?
He put this on his belt, and he kept his scythe stone in here.
Oh.
And, you know, to sharpen the scythe.
Okay.
And then they got heavy. This gets heavy, and you're working hard. Then they would stick this in the stubble, like that.
Oh, okay.
And with a stone sticking out of there, it wouldn't get lost.
Hmm.
If you'd stick it, you know, and it would get, if you laid it down in the stubble, you'd never find it,
Yeah.
Right.
because that field looks the same.
Yeah.
And so that was, and this one had one of those stickers, but it rotted off. But you see what they did?
Worming.
Yeah, but you see what they did? They put some straw down in there, and that way the stone wouldn't fall through. And he still used this for years. Feel how light it is.
Yeah, I did. That's really something.
Uh-huh.
One of the things that they had a set of binoculars, and they were the dead ringers for these. I seen a picture of them. I've misplaced that, but
Do you know why Lincoln was shot? History tells us that it was because to emancipate the blacks.
Mhm.
But there's other stories that come out that you have to consider. The same way JFK. Why was JFK assassinated? For the same reason that Lincoln. Lincoln was printing his own United States of America money.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't want this. So that's the bigwigs, the elitists, the Illuminati, they got rid of Lincoln because they didn't want that. They wanted to control the money. JFK did the same thing. To show you current events, JFK was printing money, and it was being spread out whatever was there, and he was assassinated. in that the paper that comes out of Milford,
Mhm.
you know, the paper that we get, somebody had in there just this year, just a month or two ago, had in there advertising they wanted to have a dollar bill, and it was, forget how they stated, 1863.